"We can't manage to pay you more," my manager said while buying his third vacation home. I agreed and kept typing for $12 per hour, while they billed patrons $300 per hour. "What's your 2 weeks for?" he asked later. I beamed. "I've been crafting my own software at night. And your key patron just..." It flashed across my screen like a betrayal in slow motion. An email, not meant for my eyes, laid bare a truth so infuriating, so utterly dehumanizing, it nearly broke me. But instead, it ignited a fire that would consume everything. The sterile hum of the office fluorescent lights seemed to mock the chaos unfolding on my screen. My fingers, frozen over the keyboard, felt like they belonged to someone else entirely. In that deafening silence, my entire world shifted. That email, it confirmed what my gut already suspected. It was from Brendan, our CEO, to HR, accidentally CC'd to the entire dev team.
And it was about me.
Sophia's billing rate to clients will remain at $300 an hour, but keep her at $12 an hour through Q4. She doesn't have the leverage to negotiate. Single mom, community college background, classic hungry immigrant kid syndrome. She'll take whatever we give her. For a solid 3 seconds, the entire office held its breath. Then came the frantic recall attempt, followed by the violent slam of Brendan's office door. But the tears didn't come. My eyes burned, but something else, something cold and hard, started to crystallize inside me as I stared at those lines of code, blurring on my screen. My name is Sophia Ramirez. I was 31 years old, and for the past 9 months, I'd been living on ramen and prayer, single-handedly rebuilding Axion Tech's entire client portal from the ground up. I arrived at Axion Tech carrying not just my hopes, but the crushing weight of student loans and a mountain of responsibilities. My daughter, Lily, was 4. She had medical needs, and reliable health insurance wasn't a luxury. It was non-negotiable. Her father? He'd vanished to Uruguay with his yoga instructor, leaving behind a post-it note and child support payments that were, at best, sporadic. When I interviewed, Brendan Pembroke, the CEO, leaned back in a leather throne that probably cost more than my beat-up car. He told me they were taking a chance on me. My coding was promising but unrefined. He offered me $12 an hour as a junior developer, with a promise of a 6-month review. "We're a family here at Axion," he'd said, showing me glossy photos of company retreats I'd later learn only senior staff were ever invited to. "We invest in people who invest in us." I bought it. I had to. Lily's medication alone cost $1,400 a month, and our landlord had just hiked the rent again. I was desperate. My first day, they stuck me in a corner desk with a wobbly leg, right next to the bathroom where the toilet constantly ran. My computer, a relic, took 14 minutes just to boot up. My training was a stack of outdated documents and a directive to figure it out. But God help me, I did. I stayed late every single night, dissecting Axion's glitchy, fragmented systems. I rebuilt components that no one else dared touch. I streamlined processes so ancient, the original programmers had probably retired decades ago. Within 3 months, clients were requesting me by name for their projects. "You have such a way of explaining complex things," they'd say. "Nobody's ever made this make sense before." I didn't know then, couldn't even imagine, that Axion was billing them $300 an hour for my time, while I was still making $12. The 6-month review? It never happened. When I finally mustered the courage to ask Brendan about it, he looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something vital. "We're tightening belts right now, Sophia. The economy, you know how it is." He didn't even look up from his phone. "Maybe next quarter." That very afternoon, I overheard him booking a yacht for his summer vacation. His 3rd vacation that year. My blood ran cold. After that, I started eating lunch in my car. Part of it was to save the $5 I'd spend at the vending machine, but mostly, it was because I couldn't stomach watching the executives order $200 sushi platters for their meetings while I carefully rationed Lily's applesauce cups to last the week. The breaking point arrived on a sweltering Tuesday in July. The office AC was broken, but, naturally, only in the developer bullpen. The executive floor remained frosty cold. My shirt was plastered to my back as I debugged a critical client issue, racing against a deadline that no one had bothered to tell me about until that very morning. Brendan strolled in at 11:30, fresh from a golf game, his gaze sliding right over me. "How's that Meridian project coming?" "They're our biggest client. I can't afford any screw-ups." "Almost done," I said, not bothering to mention I'd been there since 5 a.m. "Just fixing the payment processing integration." Good, he mumbled, checking his Rolex, a new one, different from last week's. "They're paying premium rates for this rush job, so make it perfect." Something just snapped inside me. What does Meridian pay for rush development work? I heard myself ask. His eyes narrowed, just for a second. Then he answered casually. $350 an hour. Corporate rate. $350 an hour for my work. My $12 an hour labor. My stomach lurched. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, in our one-bedroom apartment, where she slept on a pull-out couch because I couldn't afford a two-bedroom, I didn't open my work computer. I opened mine. The ancient Dell I'd pieced together from university surplus sales. And I started to build. Not just code, but plan. Drawing diagrams, thinking like the business owner no one at Axion would ever believe I could be. I studied their client contracts when no one was looking. I analyzed their pricing structure. I documented their glaring failings and inefficiencies. Every night, from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., I meticulously built my alternative. I called it Luma, a client portal system so intuitive, so elegant, it made Axion's platform look like it was chiseled in the Stone Age. Because, honestly, parts of it were. I named my company Solaris Digital. Just seeing those words in my registration documents, it was the first time I felt truly powerful in years. By day, I kept my head down at Axion Tech. I smiled politely when Brendan complained about budget constraints while sporting a new designer watch. I nodded when HR sent a memo about postponing performance reviews due to economic uncertainty, the very same week they renovated the executive washrooms with imported Italian marble. But I worked harder than ever on their projects because every line of code I wrote for them was actually a lesson showing me how to improve my system. 3 months into my secret nighttime venture, my neighbor Chloe, a brilliant graphic designer who'd been similarly exploited at her agency, joined me. We worked from my kitchen table, hunched over laptops after our kids were asleep. She designed the beautiful, intuitive interface that would make my powerful backend truly shine. "They'll never see it coming," she whispered one night at 2 a.m. as we high-fived over a breakthrough. "They think people like us are just grateful for the scraps." By month 4, I had a working prototype. By month 5, I'd secured a small business loan based purely on the strength of Luma. The loan officer actually said, "This is the most impressive bootstrap project I've seen in years." I used some of that money to consult a lawyer about my Axion contract. Turns out, they'd been so cheap and careless, they'd used an outdated template that completely omitted a non-compete clause or any language about intellectual property developed on my own time, with my own resources. "You're clear," my lawyer confirmed. "They have absolutely no claim on what you've built independently." Back at Axion, things were spiraling. Brendan hired his nephew as a development consultant for $85 an hour, even though the kid barely knew the difference between Java and JavaScript. Meanwhile, my humble request for a $2 raise was met with a patronizing lecture about paying my dues and the realities of business. The final, unforgivable straw came during a client meeting I wasn't even supposed to attend. I was pulled in last minute when Brendan's nephew's demo crashed spectacularly. The client was Meridian Technologies, Axion's biggest account. Their CEO, Isabel Clark, was legendary, brilliant, sharp, with zero tolerance for incompetence. My heart hammered, but I calmly fixed the demo in real time, explaining the features, recovering the data. When it was over, Isabel looked at me, then at Brendan. "Who is this?" she asked him. "Oh, just one of our junior people," he said dismissively. "Sophia's been with us about a year." Isabel's gaze never left mine. "You built this entire system." Before Brendan could even interrupt, I nodded. "Yes. And the previous version, too." She handed me her card. Not a corporate one, but her personal card, with her private number handwritten on the back. "Call me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "We should talk." Brendan's face darkened as he practically manhandled her out, his hand on her elbow as if to physically steer her away from me. Through the glass conference room walls, I saw him laughing far too loudly at something she said, while she looked back at me with an unnerving curiosity. That night, after Lily was finally asleep, I called the number. "I've been watching you solve problems in real time for 90 minutes, Isabel said, no preamble. "That's more impressive than most developers' portfolios. What's your story, Sophia?" So I told her. Not everything. I wasn't ready to reveal Luma yet, but enough. About my background, my education, Lily, my passion for elegant solutions. "What's Axion paying you?" she asked bluntly. I hesitated. Then I told her. The silence stretched so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. $12 an hour, she finally repeated. "And they bill us." She trailed off. "I see." 2 days later, Brendan called me into his office. His face was flushed, and I initially thought it was anger. But then I realized it was fear. "Meridian is concerned about some aspects of their project," he said stiffly. "Isabel Clark has requested that you be the primary point of contact going forward, exclusively." He made it sound like an accusation. "Okay," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "What did you say to her?" he demanded. "Nothing about Axion," I answered truthfully. I hadn't needed to. She'd figured it out herself. For the next 3 weeks, I worked directly with Meridian, attending video calls Brendan was pointedly not invited to. Isabel and her team respected my input, implemented my suggestions, treated me like a professional. Meanwhile, Luma was nearly complete. Chloe had built something truly revolutionary, a system that did everything Axion's platform did, but faster, more securely, and with an interface so intuitive that user testing groups were calling it magical. I'd secured a tiny office space, nothing fancy, just a room above a coffee shop owned by another mom from Lily's school, who gave me a deal on the rent. I'd even hired 2 other developers, brilliant women who, like me, had been undervalued in their own jobs. We worked nights and weekends, fueled by sheer determination and discount grocery store coffee. Then came the day I'd been both dreading and fiercely anticipating. The day I finally gave my 2 weeks' notice at Axion. I printed the letter on plain, white paper. No fancy letterhead. I wasn't ready to reveal Solaris Digital just yet. Just a simple, professional resignation. Brendan was on his phone when I knocked on his open door. He held up a finger, making me wait while he finished what sounded like a lunch reservation for 4 at a restaurant where appetizers cost more than my daily wage. Finally, he put the phone down. "What is it, Nina?" "Sophia," I corrected, something I'd done at least 20 times in my 15 months there. "I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice." I placed the letter on his desk. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he leaned back, studying me with a mix of amusement and annoyance. "Let me guess, Meridian offered you something."
Typical.
"They've always had poaching issues." He sighed dramatically. "Look, we might be able to bump you to $14 an hour, but you have to understand, people with your background." "I'm not going to Meridian," I interrupted, cutting him off mid-patronizing thought. That got his attention. "Then where?" "I've started my own company." He didn't just chuckle. He threw his head back and laughed. A full, genuine, gut-busting laugh, as if I'd just delivered the funniest punchline he'd heard all year. "Your own." He couldn't even finish the sentence. "Sophia, come on. Do you have any idea what it takes to run a tech company? The capital investment alone." "I've secured funding," I said quietly. That stopped his laughter dead. "What kind of funding?" "Enough." I wouldn't give him details. "My last day will be the 15th. I'm happy to document all my projects and train whoever you assign to take them over." He was silent for a long moment, calculating. I could almost see the rusty gears turning in his head. Finally, he sighed. "Look, everyone gets frustrated sometimes. Why don't you take a few days off? Think things through. Starting a business is hard, especially for single parents without a support system." The sheer, Dripping condescension in his voice made something hot snap inside me, but I kept my expression neutral. My decision is final. I appreciate the opportunities Axion has provided. The corporate platitude tasted like ash on my tongue. As I turned to leave, he called after me, his voice suddenly hard. What's this company of yours going to do, exactly? I paused at the door, looked back. You'll see. That afternoon, Brendan called an emergency meeting with the executive team. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see him gesturing wildly, occasionally pointing straight at me. The other developers shot me curious glances, but I just kept coding, as if nothing had changed. Over the next few days, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. Brendan assigned his nephew to shadow me, obviously hoping to extract every bit of knowledge before I left. The kid mostly just stared at his phone, occasionally asking questions that revealed how utterly clueless he was about what I'd built. A week into my notice period, I got a text from Isabel Clark. Lunch tomorrow? My office. Important to discuss before things change. My heart leaped. I replied with a simple, I'll be there. The next day, I told Brendan I had a doctor's appointment. He looked suspicious, but couldn't really deny me medical care, could he? I took an Uber to Meridian's headquarters, a magnificent glass building downtown that made Axion's offices look embarrassingly shabby. Isabel met me in the lobby herself, no assistant. She led me not to a conference room, but to her private office on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to a seating area where a light lunch was already laid out. Not extravagant, just fresh, healthy options.
Consider it.
Brendan called me yesterday, she continued, cutting straight to the chase. He was concerned that I might be planning to hire you. I raised an eyebrow, but stayed silent. He informed me that hiring you would constitute a hostile business action and could jeopardize our partnership with Axion. She picked up a water glass. Then he offered to reduce our rate by 15% if we signed a 3-year contract. And what did you say? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I told him I'd think about it. She set down her glass, her gaze unwavering. But what I really want to know is about this company you're starting. He seemed unusually rattled about it. I hesitated. This was it. The moment of truth. I'd brought my laptop, Luma's full demo loaded and ready. But once I showed it to her, there'd be no turning back. Before I show you, I said, carefully choosing my words, I need to be clear about something. I didn't build this to steal Axion's clients. I built it because I knew I could create something fundamentally better. Isabel nodded slowly. Understood. I opened my laptop and pulled up Luma. For the next 30 minutes, I walked her through it all. The streamlined workflow, the innovative security features, the incredibly intuitive interface Chloe had designed. I showed her how it integrated seamlessly with existing systems, how it anticipated user needs, how it solved problems Axion's platform didn't even acknowledge existed. When I finished, Isabel was silent, her expression utterly unreadable. Then she asked one question, a quiet bombshell. When can you deploy this for Meridian? My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my fingertips. This wasn't how I'd planned anything. I'd expected months of relentless grinding to secure my first major client, not an immediate offer from a company the size of Meridian. 2 weeks, I heard myself say, pushing past the shock. I have the infrastructure ready, but I need time to migrate your data and customize certain elements. Isabel nodded, then leaned forward. And your pricing structure? I named a figure. 30% less than what Axion was charging them, yet. Still enough to give me a healthy profit margin and pay my small team fairly. Done, she said, extending her hand. Send over the contracts this afternoon. I stared at her outstretched hand, suddenly terrified. Was this real? Don't you need to discuss this with your board, your IT department? Isabel smiled. Not the practiced corporate smile from her press photos, but something far more genuine, almost mischievous. Sophia, I've spent 15 years in this industry, watching brilliant women undersell themselves while mediocre men profit from their work. I am the CEO. I make the technology decisions. She kept her hand extended. And I want to work with you. We shook hands. And in that moment, something shifted in the universe. I felt it. A redistribution of power. A rebalancing. There's one more thing, Isabel said, as we finished lunch. Meridian represents about 40% of Axion's annual revenue. Brendan knows this. When he realizes you've taken us with you. She didn't finish the sentence. He'll try to destroy me, I said simply. Yes, she agreed. Are you prepared for that? I thought about all the nights I'd worked until my eyes burned. About Lily asking why Mommy was always tired. About the time I'd had to choose between fixing my car's brakes and buying her asthma medication. I've survived worse, I told Isabel. And I meant it. When I returned to Axion that afternoon, Brendan was waiting by my desk, arms crossed. Doctor appointment run long? He asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. Traffic, I answered, sitting down and logging into my computer. Funny thing, he continued, perching uninvited on the edge of my desk. I called Meridian to discuss their contract renewal. Isabel's assistant said she was in a meeting all afternoon with a vendor. His eyes bored into me. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? I met his gaze steadily. I'm not privy to Isabel Clark's schedule. He studied me for another agonizing moment, then pushed off my desk. Just remember, anything you developed while employed here belongs to Axion. Anything. He emphasized the word with a venomous jab of his finger toward my face. And I'll be damned if I let some community college dropout walk away with my intellectual property. I waited until he was halfway across the room before I spoke. Actually, my voice was quiet, but it carried in the suddenly silent office. I did graduate. Summa cum laude. It's in my employment file. The one you obviously never read. His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn around. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I worked. I finalized contracts with Meridian, secured our new office space, and meticulously mapped out a transition plan for my remaining week at Axion. More importantly, I backed up every single email, every document, every piece of evidence proving Luma was developed independently on my own time, with my own resources. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Watch your back. Brendan knows something's up. Cleaning house tomorrow. The next morning, I walked into Axion to find security guards at the entrance. Malcolm, a senior developer who'd always been kind to me, was being escorted out, a decade of his life crammed into a cardboard box. What's happening? I asked Jenna from HR, as she scurried past, looking utterly flustered. Organizational restructuring, she mumbled, avoiding my eyes. Brendan will address everyone at 10 o'clock. My heart hammered against my ribs as I went to my desk and started frantically downloading essential personal files. All around me, others were doing the same, the air thick with palpable panic. By 9:45, 3 more developers had been escorted out. At 10 sharp, Brendan emerged from the executive suite, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits I'd never seen before. As you may have heard, Axion is undergoing necessary changes to remain competitive, he announced to the tense room. Unfortunately, that means eliminating positions that no longer align with our strategic vision. He read from a list. 10 names. When he finished, security guards moved in. My name wasn't among them. The wave of relief that washed over me was immediately followed by a crushing shame. Those whose names were called, Brendan's voice was mechanical, devoid of emotion. Please gather your personal items and follow security. Your final paychecks will be mailed. The rest of you, there will be a mandatory team meeting at 2 p.m. to discuss the new direction of the company. As the shell-shocked employees were led away, I noticed a chilling pattern. Every person on that list had been hired around the same time as me. Every person had been underpaid. And every single one of them had, at some point, quietly questioned Brendan's decisions. He wasn't just restructuring, he was systematically eliminating potential allies before coming for me. The next few hours passed in a fog. I mechanically coded, my mind racing, planning my escape. The 2 p.m. meeting? It had to be a trap. But leaving early would only confirm his suspicions. At 1:30, my cell phone rang. Lily's school. Miss Ramirez, Lily had an asthma attack during recess. She's stable, but she's asking for you. The school nurse's calm voice cut through the corporate panic like a knife. I'll be right there. I grabbed my bag and bolted toward the exit, almost colliding with Brendan as he emerged from the elevator. Where are you going? He demanded, blocking my path. The meeting, my daughter's in the nurse's office. Asthma attack. I tried to move past him. He stood firm. We're in the middle of a company crisis, and you're leaving for a routine medical issue? Something inside me crystallized. In that moment, I saw him completely. Not as the intimidating boss I'd feared, but as the small, insecure man he truly was. Move, I said quietly, my voice laced with a steel I didn't know I
Possessed.
Excuse me? He blinked, unused to being challenged. My daughter can't breathe.
Move.
For a terrifying second, I thought he might actually physically restrain me. Then, something in my expression must have warned him, because he stepped aside. Don't bother coming back, he yelled after me. I didn't look back. At the school, I found Lily in the nurse's office, her breathing stabilized, but her little face still streaked with tears and fear. When she saw me, she threw her arms around my neck. I got scared, Mommy, she whispered. I know, baby, but I'm here now. Over her head, I met the nurse's eyes. Thank you for calling me. Of course, the older woman hesitated. I tried your work number first, but they said you were no longer employed there. Ice shot through my veins. When was this? About 20 minutes ago. Even as I'd been walking out, Brendan had already been erasing me. I signed Lily out and took her home. While she napped, exhausted from the attack, I made calls. To my lawyer, to my small team, to Isabel. He fired me, I explained. Or I quit. It happened simultaneously. Are you all right? Isabel asked, genuine concern in her voice. Yes, I said, surprised by my own resilience. But we need to move faster. Can you have your IT team available tomorrow? I want to migrate your systems before Brendan realizes what's truly happening. They'll be ready, she promised. And Sophia, my offer to invest in Solaris Digital still stands. I meant what I said about supporting women entrepreneurs. I hadn't expected that. A powerful ally who saw my value not just as a service provider, but as a business owner. The emotion caught in my throat. Thank you. I managed my voice thick. That evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, my phone exploded with notifications. Emails, texts, voicemails, all from Axion employees, current and recently fired. Word had spread about my dramatic exit and Brendan's epic meltdown. He completely lost it, texted Rohan, a developer I'd trained. Started screaming about betrayal and IP theft. Had security remove everything from your desk. Even took your coffee mug from Malcolm. Another text, this one from Jenna in HR. Heard you're starting something new. Whatever it is, I'm in. Then a chilling one. Just overheard Brendan on the phone with lawyers. They're planning to sue you for stealing their proprietary technology. Direct quote. I don't care what it costs. Destroy her. Please tell me you have protection.
I did.
My lawyer had made sure everything was airtight. I had documented every single line of code for Luma, all written on my own time. I had witnesses who could testify that Axion had no similar technology in development. I had dated records proving Luma was conceived and built entirely separate from my work for Axion. But legal protection wouldn't stop Brendan from trying to crush me. He had resources, connections, and a vindictive streak a mile wide. The next morning, I dropped Lily at school and headed straight to our small office above the coffee shop. Chloe was already there, setting up workstations for the 2 additional developers we'd hired, both, ironically, former Axion employees Brendan had fired yesterday. Ready for the fight? She asked, handing me coffee in a chipped mug that said, Boss Lady, a gift from her daughter to mark the founding of Solaris Digital. No, I admitted, taking a deep breath. But we're doing it anyway. The next 12 hours were a blur of intense, focused work. We migrated Meridian's entire system to Luma, troubleshooting in real time, supporting their employees through every step of the transition. By midnight, it was done. Meridian was officially running on our platform. I drove home in a daze, equal parts utterly exhausted and absolutely exhilarated. We'd done it. Launched our company, secured a major client, completed our first successful deployment. All in the span of 48 hours. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. An unknown number. "Is this Sofia Ramirez?" An unfamiliar male voice asked. "Yes," I answered cautiously. "This is Ethan Miller from Venture Capital. Isabel Clark suggested I call you. We're interested in discussing investment opportunities with Solaris Digital." I sat bolt upright in bed, suddenly wide awake. Venture Capital was one of the largest tech investment firms in the country. "I'm listening," I managed. "We've reviewed the preliminary information Isabel shared, and we're impressed with Luma's capabilities, particularly how it addresses pain points that Accion's platform has ignored for years." He paused. "I understand you developed this independently." "Completely," I confirmed, my voice firm. "I can provide all documentation." "Good," Ethan said. "Because Brendan Pembroke is currently telling anyone who will listen that you stole Accion's intellectual property, including our managing partner, during a rather awkward breakfast meeting this morning." My stomach dropped. "And what did your managing partner say?" Ethan chuckled. "She asked to see Accion's patent filings for the technology Brendan claims you stole." "There weren't any, of course." The relief was instant but fleeting. "That won't stop him," I said, knowing Brendan. "No," Ethan agreed. "Which is why we'd like to meet as soon as possible. Today, if you're available." He knew exactly what he was doing. Having venture capital's backing would make potential clients far less nervous about Brendan's threats. We arranged to meet that afternoon. I called my neighbor to watch Lily after school and headed back to our office to prepare with Chloe and the team. I was reviewing our pitch deck when my lawyer called. "Axion just filed suit," he said, no preamble. "They're alleging theft of trade secrets, breach of contract, and tortious interference with business relationships." Despite expecting this, the reality of being sued hit me like a physical blow. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice tight. "First, don't panic. Their case is weak," he reassured me. "Second, send me all your documentation showing Luma's independent development. And third," his voice softened slightly, "prepare for this to get ugly. Brendan is painting you as a disgruntled employee who deliberately stole from the company that gave you a chance when no one else would. That familiar narrative, the ungrateful immigrant, the charity case who didn't know her place, it made my blood boil." "Let me guess," I said bitterly. "He's playing the victim. Poor, successful businessman targeted by a scheming former employee." "Something like that," my lawyer confirmed. "But we have truth on our side. And apparently, you have Isabel Clark, which counts for a lot." After hanging up, I sat quietly, absorbing the chilling reality. I was being sued. My fledgling company was under attack. The safe path would be to settle, to give Brendan something to satisfy his ego, to make the problem disappear. But that would mean admitting I'd done something wrong, that I had something to apologize for. And I absolutely, unequivocally did not. When I arrived at Venture Capital's offices that afternoon, I was stunned. Not just Ethan was waiting, but Isabel too, along with 4 other people, representatives from major companies I recognized as Accion's clients. "Hope you don't mind the expanded audience," Ethan said, shaking my hand. "Word has spread about Luma, and these folks were interested in seeing what prompted Brendan's rather spectacular meltdown at the Chamber of Commerce lunch today." Isabel elaborated, a tight smile playing on her lips. "He accused me publicly of corporate espionage for working with you, then threatened everyone in the room with legal action if they so much as took a meeting with Solaris Digital." She chuckled, a dark, knowing sound. It had the exact opposite effect of what he intended. Nothing makes CEOs more curious than being told they're not allowed to look at something. For the next 2 hours, I demonstrated Luma, answering technical questions, outlining our vision for the platform. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then, one by one, they began to speak. "We've been unhappy with Axion for years," said a woman from a healthcare company. "But there weren't alternatives that met our security requirements. Until now. Brendan promised us an updated platform 18 months ago," added a man from a manufacturing firm. "We're still waiting and still paying premium rates for outdated technology." By the end of the meeting, two companies had scheduled migrations to Luma. Venture capital offered investment terms that made my head spin. And most surprisingly, a major tech publication wanted to interview me about the next big disruption in enterprise software. As we were leaving, Isabel pulled me aside. "Brendan just called an emergency board meeting at Axion," she told me. "One of their board members texted me. Apparently, they just found out that along with Meridian, 3 other major clients are considering leaving." "Because of Luma?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Because of you," she corrected. "Your story is resonating. The undervalued employee who built something better while being paid poverty wages. It's hitting a nerve, especially with other companies worried about their own talented employees walking out the door." The next week passed in a surreal blur. Our tiny office became command central as we brought on more staff, many of them, fittingly, former Axion employees. We migrated 2 more clients to Luma. The investment from venture capital allowed us to lease a proper office space, upgrade our infrastructure. Meanwhile, Axion's lawsuit progressed. My lawyer filed our response, complete with exhaustive documentation proving Luma's independent development. 3 former Axion executives even submitted affidavits, confirming the company had no similar technology in development and that Brendan had, in fact, rejected proposals for such improvements as unnecessary expenses. Then came the article. The tech publication's piece about Solaris Digital went viral, picked up by mainstream business outlets. The headline said it all. "Underpaid developer builds better system at night, takes clients with her when former employer refuses raise." The story detailed my journey from a $12 an hour developer to founder and CEO, starkly contrasting my working conditions at Axion with Brendan's opulent lifestyle. Someone, bless their heart, had leaked his infamous email about my immigrant kid syndrome and lack of leverage, which featured prominently. Public opinion swung decisively in my favor. The hashtag undervalued developers started trending. Other tech workers, equally exploited, began sharing their stories. The conversation about systemic exploitation in the industry exploded. Predictably, Brendan didn't take it well. He gave a disastrous interview where he actually defended paying me $12 an hour while billing $300 for my time as standard industry practice, suggesting I should have been grateful for the opportunity. The backlash was immediate and fierce. 3 weeks after I walked out of Axion, I received an unexpected email from Jenna in HR. "Board meeting just ended. Brendan suspended pending investigation into company practices. They're bringing in interim management. Thought you should know." That same day, my lawyer called with news. Axion wanted to settle the lawsuit. Their conditions? We would acknowledge they had no legitimate claim. They would issue a public apology. And, most surprisingly, they would pay damages for defamation. "They're cutting Brendan loose," my lawyer explained. The board saw the writing on the wall. The publicity was killing them. Clients were fleeing, and their own legal team admitted the case was unwinnable. I sat in our new office, a real office, with actual working air conditioning and chairs that didn't wobble, and tried to process how completely my life had changed in less than a month. "What do you want to do?" Chloe asked quietly. She'd been with me from the beginning, working at my kitchen table when Luma was just an idea born of desperation and rage. What did I want? Revenge had stopped being my primary motivation somewhere along the way. What drove me now was building something that reflected my values. Fair compensation, respect for people's time and talent, technology that actually solved problems instead of creating new ones. "I want to accept the settlement," I decided, but with one condition. 2 days later, I sat across from Axion's board of directors. Brendan was conspicuously absent, of course. The interim CEO, a formidable woman named Margot with decades of industry experience, led the discussion. "We accept your condition," she said finally, "though it's unusual." So was paying a senior developer $12 an hour while billing clients $300 for her time. I replied, my voice even. My condition had been simple. As part of the settlement, Axion would engage a third-party firm to review all employee compensation, correct any disparities, and provide back pay where appropriate. They would also implement transparent salary bands and eliminate the practice of forbidding employees from discussing their compensation. As I stood to leave, Margot asked one last question. Why this condition? You could have asked for more money, more favorable terms for Solaris. Why focus on Axion's current employees? I thought about all the Sophias still out there, still undervalued, still afraid to speak up. Because change has to start somewhere, I said simply. 6 months later, Solaris Digital had grown to 30 employees. We'd moved to a larger office in a downtown building, not ostentatious, but comfortable, with a beautiful daycare center on the first floor. Lily spent her afternoons there after school, often visiting my office to draw pictures at the small desk I'd set up for her. Our client list had expanded to include companies that had previously been exclusive to Axion. Lumo was recognized as the most innovative platform in its class, with features our competitors scrambled to copy. Brendan had resigned to pursue other opportunities, according to Axion's press release. Industry gossip, though, suggested no tech company would touch him. His reputation was permanently damaged by the scandal and his utterly catastrophic handling of it. Last I heard, he was trying to rebrand himself as a business consultant in another state. Axion itself survived under new leadership that implemented the very changes we demanded. Former colleagues told me the company culture had transformed, with transparent compensation and proper recognition of contributions. As for me, I paid off my student loans. I moved Lily into an apartment where she finally had her own bedroom. I started a college fund for her. And most importantly, I created a company where people were valued for their contributions, not exploited for their vulnerabilities. Sometimes, I still think about that accidental email, the one where Brendan dismissed me as having classic hungry immigrant kid syndrome, with no leverage to negotiate. He'd been right about one thing. I was hungry. But not just for money or success. I was hungry for dignity, for recognition of my worth, for the opportunity to build something that reflected my values, rather than someone else's greed. And that's exactly what I did. Remember, sometimes the greatest revenge isn't tearing something down, it's building something so incredible they can only watch. Building Solaris Digital was, in many ways, an act of defiance. Every line of code, every design decision, every hire, it all stemmed from that initial spark of anger, yes, but quickly evolved into something far more profound. Moving into our first real office, a bright, airy space that finally had stable internet and chairs that didn't wobble, felt like stepping into a dream I hadn't even dared to fully articulate. It was just above a bustling coffee shop, the scent of roasting beans a constant, comforting presence, and the friendly owner, another single mom from Lily's school, became a good friend, often sending up gratis lattes when our late-night sessions ran particularly long. The team grew rapidly, a vibrant mix of former Axion colleagues and other talented individuals who, like Chloe and me, had felt stifled and undervalued elsewhere. There was Mark, a brilliant back-end engineer who'd been stuck writing legacy code at a massive corporation for years, his ideas consistently ignored. Then Lena, a UX designer whose creative vision had been crushed under layers of corporate bureaucracy. We were a motley crew, all united by a shared understanding of what not to do and a fervent desire to build something better. The energy in that office was electric. We didn't have foosball tables or kombucha on tap, at least not yet, but we had a palpable sense of purpose. We had transparent salary bands, so everyone knew exactly what everyone else made and why. We had flexible hours, understanding that life, especially for parents, doesn't fit neatly into a 9 to 5 box. We celebrated small victories, learned from our mistakes without blame, and championed each other's successes. Lily would often join me after school, settling into her little corner desk, coloring while I worked, occasionally showing me a masterpiece she created. Her presence was a constant reminder of why I was doing all this. It wasn't just about the business. It was about building a world where she and others like her could thrive without being constrained by someone else's narrow perceptions. The initial success with Meridian, followed by 2 other major client migrations, gave us incredible momentum. The tech publication article had indeed gone viral, painting Solaris Digital as the rising star challenging old industry norms. Other companies previously exclusive to Axion started reaching out. It felt like every day brought a new opportunity, a new challenge. We were still small, just 30 people, but our impact was disproportionate. Luma continued to evolve, constantly improved by the collective brilliance of my team. We focused on features that truly mattered to users: security, intuitive design, seamless integrations, things that Axion, in its pursuit of short-term profit, had always overlooked. But growth, as I quickly learned, came with its own set of trials. The early days of frantic, scrappy development, fueled by pure adrenaline, began to give way to the more nuanced demands of scaling a company. My role shifted dramatically. I spent less time writing code, which honestly stung a little. My hands still itched to dive into the debugger to solve a complex algorithm. Instead, I was in meetings, with VCs discussing follow-up rounds, with potential strategic partners, with lawyers for new contracts. I was hiring, mentoring, strategizing. The loneliness of leadership, something Isabel had once hinted at, started to settle in. Every decision, every triumph, every setback landed squarely on my shoulders. I found myself missing the simple, focused hours of coding in the quiet of my kitchen, a time when the only pressure was to make my dream a reality. Now, the dreams of 30 people and their families rested on my choices. One afternoon, about a year after the Axion debacle, I sat across from Jonathan Cole, a senior partner at venture capital, in his opulent office. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off polished mahogany. He was articulate, sharp, and charismatic, everything you'd expect from a man who held the purse strings to millions. He praised Luma, commended our growth, and then, subtly, began to push. Sophia, he leaned forward, Solaris Digital has proven itself. The market is ripe. We need to accelerate. Double your headcount, aggressively pursue acquisition targets, maybe even a public offering in the next 3 years. We can't afford to be comfortable now. This is where you either become a unicorn or you get swallowed. His words, though framed as encouragement, felt like a cold shower. Growth at any cost. It was the very mantra that had led to Axion's decay, to Brendan's dehumanizing practices. Jonathan, I said, my priority has always been sustainable growth, built on a foundation of ethical practices and a strong culture. We're not just building a product, we're building a company that values its people. He smiled, a practiced, non-committal smile. Of course, Sophia. And we value your vision. Just make sure that vision doesn't get in the way of maximizing shareholder value. It was a polite warning. The Brendan effect, I realized, wasn't just tied to one man. It was a pervasive mindset within the industry, a pressure to prioritize profit over people, efficiency over empathy. I left that meeting feeling a chill, a stark reminder that even with success, the battle for my company's soul was far from over.
The pressure mounted.
We landed a major contract with a global logistics firm, a deal that would catapult us into a new league. It was exciting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. But it also meant long nights, stretched resources, and the need to hire even more rapidly. I remember one particularly brutal week, balancing calls with London, Tokyo, and New York, all while a critical bug surfaced in Luma that threatened the data integrity for one of our newer clients. I found myself falling back into old habits, working until 3 a.m., subsisting on coffee and quick meals grabbed at my desk. One Saturday morning, Lily found me passed out on the couch, laptop still open. She gently shook my arm, her small face creased with worry. "Mommy, are you okay? You look tired." Her innocent question hit me harder than any venture capitalist's demand. I hugged her tight, feeling the smallness of her against my weariness. "I'm okay, baby. Just a very busy week." But I knew, deep down, I wasn't okay. I was becoming the workaholic I swore I'd never be. I was losing sight of why I started all this. That weekend, I had a long, honest conversation with Chloe. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting my own exhaustion. "Sophia, we set out to build something different. But different means nothing if you burn yourself out in the process. Or if we become just another company that grinds its people down. Her words were a much-needed splash of cold water. We started implementing no meeting Wednesdays, mandatory deep work blocks, and even a company-wide unplug day once a month. We hired a dedicated HR manager, someone who genuinely cared about employee well-being, to ensure our values weren't just words on a wall but embedded in our daily operations. And I started delegating more, trusting my brilliant team to take the reins. It was hard letting go of that control, that deeply ingrained belief that I had to do it all myself. But it was essential. My relationship with Isabel Clark also deepened. She wasn't just a client. She became a mentor, a confidant, a powerful ally. She understood the pressures I was facing, having navigated similar challenges as a woman CEO in a male-dominated industry. We had regular sanity check calls, where I could vent about investor demands, market pressures, or the latest subtle sexism I'd encountered. One time, a potential partner openly questioned my technical leadership, suggesting Solaris Digital needed a more seasoned CTO, perhaps a man, to handle the complex architecture. Isabel, upon hearing this, not only shut down the partnership but publicly praised Solaris Digital's engineering prowess, specifically highlighting my contributions. Her unwavering support was a shield against the microaggressions that still, unfortunately, littered the path of any woman in tech. Just as we started finding our rhythm, a new challenge emerged. A larger, well-established competitor, Global Tech Solutions, launched a new client portal product, clearly inspired, some might say copied, by Luma. It wasn't an exact replica, but the core ideas, the intuitive workflow, the security features we had pioneered, were all there. They had a massive marketing budget, a global sales force, and years of market dominance. Our investors started to get nervous. "Sophia, we need to respond aggressively," Jonathan Cole urged. "Cut prices, launch a smear campaign, buy up smaller competitors." It felt like a trap, forcing us to play their game, a game of cutthroat competition that contradicted everything Solaris Digital stood for. I remembered Brendan's desperation, his willingness to destroy to win. I wouldn't be like that. Instead, I convened my team. We debated, brainstormed, and strategized. Our decision? We would innovate, not retaliate. We would double down on our values. We accelerated the development of Luma 2.0, an ambitious overhaul that incorporated AI-driven analytics and predictive features, making our platform not just intuitive but prescient. We also started a Solaris Digital Open Innovation Initiative, inviting community developers to build integrations and modules for Luma, sharing our APIs, and fostering a collaborative ecosystem. This move, radical for the industry at the time, garnered significant attention. It showcased our belief in open collaboration over closed-off competition. It was a direct counterpoint to the hoard your IP, crush your rivals mentality. This defining moment, a strategic pivot driven by our core values, changed everything. The tech press, already watching us closely, lauded our approach. Global Tech's product, while competent, felt stale and corporate by comparison. Their copycat image backfired, making them look unoriginal. Our customer base, particularly those who appreciated our ethical stance, became fiercely loyal. We didn't just survive, we thrived. We didn't just compete, we redefined the terms of engagement. Around this time, a year and a half after Solaris Digital's launch, I received an anonymous tip. Brendan Pembroke was attempting to launch a new consulting firm, pitching his expertise in disruptive innovation to struggling tech companies. He'd even tried to recruit a few former Axion employees, promising them a fresh start. But his reputation, irrevocably tarnished by the Axion scandal and the viral article, preceded him. Every door was slammed in his face. He was a pariah. A few months later, I saw a small article buried deep in a business section. Former Axion Tech CEO's new venture fails to launch amidst investor skepticism. There was no triumph in reading it, no surge of vengeful satisfaction. Just a quiet, almost melancholic acknowledgement. His self-destruction was complete, fueled by his own greed and ego. He didn't need me to tear him down, he'd done it himself. My revenge wasn't his downfall, but my ascent, my focus on building something beautiful and impactful. His story became a cautionary tale, mine a beacon. As Solaris Digital flourished, I found myself increasingly drawn to mentoring. I started an accelerator program for women and immigrant founders, offering seed funding, mentorship, and access to our resources. It was a way to pay it forward, to ensure that other hungry immigrant kids like myself, especially women, had the leverage they needed. I remembered Brendan's dismissive words, "She doesn't have the leverage to negotiate." I now knew that leverage wasn't just about financial power or a prestigious degree. It was about knowledge, resilience, community, and an unwavering belief in your own worth. It was about building your own table when you're excluded from theirs. Lily, now 8 years old, was a bright, curious girl. She loved coming to the office, drawing elaborate future tech concepts for Luma. One evening, as I was tucking her into bed, she asked, "Mommy, why do you work so hard?" I paused, thinking about my answer. "Because, sweet pea," I said, stroking her hair, "I want to build a world where you never have to feel small or unimportant, where your ideas are heard and your hard work is valued. A world where everyone gets a fair chance to shine." She looked at me, her eyes wide. "And you're doing it, Mommy." Her simple, profound belief in me was the greatest validation I could ever receive. 5 years had passed since that fateful email. Solaris Digital was no longer just a startup. It was a recognized leader in enterprise software, known not just for its innovative technology, but for its exemplary company culture. We had over 200 employees, a global presence, and a reputation for being a workplace where people genuinely loved what they did. Our daycare center on the ground floor was always buzzing with children's laughter, a constant reminder of the vibrant, human ecosystem we had created. I still had challenges, of course, market fluctuations, tough negotiations, the relentless pace of technological change. But I faced them with a different kind of strength now, one rooted in purpose, not just survival. Axion Tech, under Margot's leadership, had slowly rebuilt its reputation, too. They had become a case study in corporate redemption, embracing the transparent compensation models and employee-centric policies we had demanded. I heard from former colleagues that it was a genuinely good place to work now. It felt good to know that my fight had not only elevated Solaris Digital but had also, in a small way, contributed to a broader, more positive shift in the industry. My personal life had found its own equilibrium. Lily had her own beautiful room, filled with books and art supplies. Her college fund was steadily growing. We took regular vacations, no longer scrimping, but truly enjoying our time together. I even found time for myself again, long runs in the morning, exploring new hobbies, reconnecting with friends outside of work. The ghost of Brendan Pembroke no longer haunted my thoughts. His story was a closed chapter, a distant memory that served only as a historical marker for how far I'd come. I realized then that success, for me, wasn't just about the numbers on a balance sheet or the size of my company. It was about creating a legacy of integrity, innovation, and empathy. It was about proving that you could build a thriving business without compromising your values or exploiting others. It was about empowering not just myself, but everyone who chose to be a part of the Solaris Digital journey. My worth, I understood deeply now, wasn't what anyone was willing to pay me or what external forces tried to label me. It was in the unwavering belief in my vision, the strength to build it, and the courage to fight for what was right. It was in the quiet satisfaction of seeing Lily grow up in a world I had, in some small way, helped to shape. And that's my story. It's been a wild ride, a testament to what happens when you turn pain into purpose and injustice into innovation. It wasn't easy. There were moments I wanted to give up, moments where the weight of it all felt unbearable. But then I'd remember Lily, remember Chloe, remember Isabel, remember all the incredible people who believed in me, and I'd keep going. Because sometimes, when the world tries to minimize you, the most powerful thing you can do is stand tall, build your own empire, and show them exactly what you're made of. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between compromise and conviction? What did you build when they tried to tear you down? I'd love to hear your stories and your thoughts on turning adversity into opportunity. Drop a comment below, and let's keep this conversation going. And if my journey resonated with you, if it sparked something inside you, please consider hitting that subscribe button. This channel is more than just stories. It's a community where we share experiences, find strength, and celebrate the incredible power of building a life true to your own worth. Thank you for being here.